The earth is telling you there's nothing to be ashamed of. Everything is part of me, everything's accepted, everything is welcomed, and you coming home to your own self-compassion is the force of healing that you're meant to bring to this world. Hello and welcome back to Remember Why You're Here, a podcast for seekers and sensitives where you can relax, receive, reconnect to yourself, and remember the most important thing of all, why you're here. I'm Asia Suler, author, earth intuitive, teacher, and in this episode today, we're going to be answering some more of your questions. I put out the call a couple months ago for y'all to send me your questions via my voice messaging service, and you did, and there were so many amazing questions. I decided to do this in two parts. So part one was released over in August, if you're interested in that, and now here we are in part two, and there are so many rich questions here, so we're gonna jump into it in just a moment, but I wanted to let you know before we started that we are running a never before done 30% off sale on all of my online courses and programs. We've never discounted anything this much before on the website, certainly not across the board, but it's really feeling like the right time to open up this opportunity to make this kind of offering. I am in the midst of my sabbatical, so I am writing my next book right now, and this is just the prime opportunity to invite more folks into the door, to be able to raise the funds to continue on my sabbatical. So if you have been eyeing any course or program on the website, whether it's a single class or you want to jump into a program like Intuitive Plant Medicine, Business as a Spiritual Journey, now is the time. They are all 30% off from now until next Monday, the 22nd. And I wanted to be able to give you a good amount of heads up on that if that's something that you're interested in. So you can head on over to asiasuler.com, check out those courses, see if any of them are winking at you, and take advantage of this once in a lifetime sale. And by doing that, you're also supporting me on this wild, brave, interesting, numinous, multi-layered journey of taking a sabbatical for the first time ever to really focus on bringing through this next book. So thank you so much for your support. Now let's get into it. Let's get into your questions. This first question is more of an invitation rather than a direct question, and it's an invitation I'm saying yes to. And this invitation was from a listener named Christine. And Christine said, "Would you share with us more about your spiritual journey? Where it's taken you, what you've explored, and how it's integrated into your life now." And I do notice this thing where often, especially if someone has been on the path for a while, maybe they've been out in the world for a while, that sometimes they forget to share, like, oh, here's my origin story, or, here's what brought me to this point. And, as of the time that I'm recording this, I have been on this path for almost 20 years. And so there's a lot of history there, and I'm happy to share a little bit more about my background and what brought me here. I always love in the podcast On Being when Krista Tippett asks people about their spiritual upbringing, and I've been waiting for someone to ask me about that. So I'm just going to go ahead and share as if you had asked me about that, Christine. But I was raised Quaker. So I was raised in the Quaker faith. I was a friend. I grew up with sort of this foundational belief system that everyone has within them the light of God, high values placed on nonviolence, compassionate communication, ways of relating with people that are peaceable and understanding. Even though my family wasn't religious per se, this was a faith that they decided to bring me and my sister up in, and it did really inform my life and my journey of just this baseline understanding of this light of the divine within all people, and also this ability to directly connect with the divine yourself. And this is one of the tenets of Quakerism, especially the kind of Quakerism that I grew up in Pennsylvania, that we all have the ability to directly access that divine. There is no hierarchy. in terms of, one person who is leading the whole group or the whole meeting. A Quaker meeting consists of folks in a room sitting and communing and getting up when they feel moved to speak, and then they speak, and then we sit in silence and acknowledge what's been spoken and integrate it. And so even though I didn't have like a very spiritual upbringing in a certain way, I had this really foundational spiritual belief system that I think supported me as I, moved deeper into my life path. And then if you've been following me for a while, you know that when I was in my teens, I developed a chronic pain condition called vulvodynia and was told that it was incurable, that I would live with this kind of pain, nerve pain and muscle pain for the rest of my life. And that was really a turning point for me. It was one of those moments where everything falls apart in life. And I often say that the world inside my body was so painful, I went outside and I started connecting with the trees, and I started sitting by the creek, and I started noticing how in nature, everything is always moving towards balance. Everything is moving towards healing, that the body of the earth is not making mistakes, that there's wisdom in what's happening within the body of the earth. There's messages there. And so even though at the time I wasn't a practicing herbalist yet, I began to heal through the wisdom of connecting with the living world, through communing and having relationship with the living world, having incredible numinous experiences where I was shown messages of hope, shown messages of guidance and direction. And so I was having a really big moment of awakening, of opening, of recognizing other layers of reality and existence, sort of through this shamanic dismemberment, dark night of the soul. I was having all of these spiritual experiences that were opening me up to these other realms of reality, and especially opening me up to the sentience of the earth and this animistic reality of everything being animated by living consciousness and sentience. At the same time, I feel really blessed to have been supported by and learning from my advisor in college, Molly McGlennon, who was my professor, my advisor, and was also starting up what would become the first Native American Studies program at Vassar, where I went to college. And so I ended up learning a lot through her, as well as through all the Indigenous thinkers, authors, writers that I was being exposed to. And it all kind of coalesced for me in this big opening and really recognizing and connecting to the numinous reality of living here on this planet and the deep sentience that we're surrounded by. So from there, I moved to New York City. I got the only job I could find taking care of plants, which was as a plant technician, which basically means I took care of people's office plants. But I had a really amazing thing happen for me when I was in New York, where I had like all this expansive time to walk around and think and be in my experiences, and started having even deeper layers and unfurlings of really connecting into what I would call deeper reality. I started being exposed to more things like channeled texts. I started practicing Reiki. I went through the different training, the different levels of Reiki to become a Reiki practitioner, to become a Reiki master, and really was just having these direct experiences of energy, of other realms of reality, of my spirit guides. My dream world became a place where I was really interacting with and exploring and getting information from the other world, and got a very clear message to go to herbal school. And a big part of why I wanted to become an herbalist was I knew I wanted to work with people. And at the time, I thought that would be in a one-on-one capacity. I thought that I would likely be practicing Reiki at the same time that I wanted to work with plants. The plants just were speaking to me so loudly. So I decided to go to school to become an herbalist. And that just took me on such an expansive, unexpected journey where I ended up starting an apothecary. I moved down here to Western North Carolina. I started my apothecary. I did start working one-on-one with people, but also what opened up was this whole realm of existence that I didn't know would be so important to me, which was teaching. And like so much of my spiritual journey has been informed by my teaching, because often I'm handed a lesson, I'm handed a learning, and then I teach from that space. And a lot of my spiritual journey and evolution has had to do with like the hard things I've gone through and have had to move through in my life. And so after herbal school ended, I sort of naturally started to transition into teaching some of the things I had been learning, herbalism, as well as flower essences, dream work, these things that have become important to me. I went on to study with dream teacher Robert Moss, learning different ways of active dreaming or shamanic dreaming. I had a series of dreams where I was specifically told to study shamanism and was told in the dreams what that meant, specifically being shown different ways to work with energy, work with time, work with shape-shifting. So then I went on to study with Sandra Ingerman online. So all these things were evolving at the same time that my life was just naturally evolving. And one of the next big things that happened to me was that I contracted Lyme disease twice and was told very specifically through that experience, which I share more about in the podcast that I just re-released the other week about how I healed from Lyme disease, but how that whole experience took me deeper into energetic levels of healing, into spiritual levels of healing, that I was completely healed in a pretty miraculous way through shamanic work. So that story is in that podcast if you're interested in listening to it. But this all deepened my journey in this way where then, I was literally when I had the dream that was informing me that shamanism would heal me from Lyme disease, I was literally at a workshop, at a training with Brian Weiss at the Omega Institute learning past life regression. So, I'm just one of those people where I'm constantly learning, I'm constantly growing, I'm constantly connecting, but so much of what has informed my spiritual path has been direct experiences of hardship that open up portals into reality, direct experiences through my dreams, through my own intuition, through communing with the natural world. And I taught for years a program called Winter Intuition School. It still sometimes makes an appearance online. And in Winter Intuition School, I taught all of these spiritual skills and tools that I had gathered. And so there's been times in my life when it's been super integrated into what I'm teaching. And then I normally am moving on to, another edge, or I'm exploring another edge. And so past few years for me, that's absolutely been within the realm of the nervous system and somatic healing and really exploring myself as a sensitive and an empath, which is something I always knew was a reality about me, but through pregnancy and birth and being a parent really brought to the forefront in a way that was no longer unavoidable. So really learning how to work with my body as a spirit guide, which also included, going through this whole journey, having chronic pain come up again in my body. Really, we walk these cycles, we revisit these spirals. And now, I'm in this place where I just am so excited about continuing to integrate everything I've learned, continuing to expand, to weave in more pieces, even deeper pieces of things I've been working with and just delighting in my own personal life for over a decade, things like ancestor work, for example. And so, I feel like there's a million ways I could answer that question. And that was a long answer to this request to share more about my spiritual journey, but I'm sharing it because all of our different paths are perfect. They lead us exactly where we need to be. And there's this piece where I want to impart to you that it's everything that you've ever done is valuable, even if you didn't get the degree, even if you didn't end up integrating it directly into what you thought you were going to be doing. Everything you've ever done is valuable and is coming back around to actually feed you in what you're doing next. And I remember my mom tells me that when I graduated from college, I spewed off to her all these things I was interested in. I was like plants, spirituality, sentience. I want to make baskets. I want to, make herbal medicine. I want to explore other realms of consciousness. I want to find out about my past lives. I don't remember all the things I said to her, but apparently I said all these things. And then she was like, I don't know how Aisha's going to do all this. How is she going to do all this? I didn't know. I was just naming the things I was interested in. And then she told me she found it. She wrote down this list and she found it later. And she was like, you did all those things. I don't know how you did it. You did all those things and you integrated it into what you're doing now. And, it's a reminder for me that everything that I've become passionate about in my life, the things I've listed so far, stone medicine, channeling, that all of these things I'm passionate, I'm interested about them because they're here to support me in the next layer of my unfolding, whether or not they become the exact thing that I offer. And I want to reflect that back to you too, that everything you've done in your life, everything you've experienced, no matter how hard it was, how painful it was, that all of these things come together to make you who you are. And that's ultimately like the ultimate spiritual path, is all of us being willing to be who we are, to walk the path of who we are. And that is the gift that we bring to this world. And that's so much of what every single one of my classes are about. And so, if any of the things that I mentioned that I've been passionate about, that I've integrated into my work are interesting to you, definitely head over to the website, check out all those different courses. There's a huge variety of things there, things like learning about how stones communicate, multidimensional vaginal healing, working with plants for your heart, working with plants to connect to the other world, learning how to become a plant healer yourself, how to be a spiritual entrepreneur. These are each class has kind of been like a capstone on a big season in my life. And many of these classes I'm continuing to update all the time as I learn and grow. So if any of these are calling to you, just know that at the base of everything that I do is you recognizing the value of your journey, of you being able to understand how it all fits together and how it's actually here to support you in the gift you're meant to bring to this world, which in so many ways is just your own becoming. So let's continue with these questions. That was kind of a big one. And we're going to go on to the next one now, because I think that this next one is a cool bridge piece for folks who are maybe where I was at, of being interested in herbalism, of, starting to connect to the plants. So this next question is as follows. As a sensitive, it's hard to discover and try different herbs because of my sensitivity to the plants. It can feel overwhelming. Do you have any tips or advice on how to try to incorporate plants in a gentle way? So I definitely ran into this when I was in herbal school. I couldn't take doses as high as other people. I found that it dysregulated me. I also had certain food sensitivities that at the time, with the kind of alcohol that was being used, I couldn't take a lot of the tinctures. So I wasn't even able to take what other people were taking in class. I had to work with it on a purely energetic level until I could make it myself. And so I want to give you full permission, if you are sensitive, to experiment with lower doses. To, instead of, if everyone's taking like a full dropper full of something, try a drop. See what happens in your body with just a drop. Like I said, when I was in herbal school, a lot of people were using grain alcohol. At the time, I was having allergic reactions to grain alcohol. And so I was not able to take any of the tinctures in herbal school. So I would hold it. I would feel its energy. I would often make a commitment to then make that tincture with alcohol I could consume, or with a menstruum I could consume. And I received so much. I learned so much. So just know that smaller doses often mean bigger results if you're sensitive. So really experiment with those smaller dosage, a drop, 2 drops, up to 15 drops. See how that works inside of you. Lean into the energetic side of herbalism. What do you feel and experience when you're sitting with the plant? What do you feel and experience when you hold the plant, when you take a tiny little nibble? So much of the healing and the information that we receive from plants comes from this very energetic level of being. And so you choosing to tune in on that level is you getting the bigger picture of that plant's medicine, of what that plant has to offer. I also find it's really helpful to work with one plant at a time. And this was something I did when I started in herbal schools. I would work with one plant for every half moon cycle. So from the full to the new and the new to the full, each half, I would pick a new plant to work with, and I would just take that plant during that time. And I would experiment with in all the different ways of being with that plant, making a flower essence, tasting the plant, making a tincture, making a salve, if that's part of the plant's medicine, dreaming with the plant, like all these different ways of working with a plant within a specific period of time, and just letting go of needing to know all the things, because overwhelm is such a big reality for sensitive people. As sensitives, we are literally taking in more sensory information about our surroundings, our environment, the sensory things we're exposed to, than someone who is not sensitive. And so limiting the scope, and then really letting it be that the input is perhaps more subtle. And you might need more subtlety in order to actually feel what you're feeling. I don't know if you've ever experienced this sense of when something's too intense, you actually go into overwhelm and you're no longer experiencing it. And you're no longer able to actually tune into your sensations in your body, what you're experiencing. And so reducing the dosage or the frequency, or really getting specific about just working with one plant, will help your nervous system to be able to experience that plant more fully, to actually be able to understand its medicine in a deeper way. I really encourage you to do this. I also really encourage you to trust what comes up for you. So we have materia medicas. We have beautiful writings that people have done about plants. We have, ancestral understanding of plants, wisdom that has been passed down for generations. And a lot of these ancestral traditions have been interrupted, have been disrupted at times. In a lot of ways, we're rebuilding what we know and understand about plants. And there's always more to explore, because not only are we evolving, but the plants are evolving as well. So I really want you to trust what you feel and experience. What you're experiencing, what you bring to the table is valuable information to help other people understand the full scope and picture of this plant's medicine. Plants interact differently with every single person. And this is why, while, knowing plant constituents, understanding disease processes, knowing about like an individual's constitution is all incredible and important and really helpful when working with plants. And there's a magic that happens between a person and a plant that cannot be replicated between any other person and any other plant. And I've seen this time and time again, especially working in private practice, that I could recommend the same plant to 5 different people, and 5 different people will have 5 completely different experiences with it, experiences that are specific to them. So as you begin to work with the plants, really take note of what you experience. Write it down, commune with the plant, ask the plant to give you more information, to give you a clearer perspective on what you're experiencing. And that information is actually really important to the overall body of wisdom information that we are gleaning again right now, that we are rebuilding right now. So really value what it is that you are picking up on as you move deeper into working with plants in a way that works for you. And of course, if this is something you're excited about, working with plants on an energetic level, an intuitive level, working with plants as a sensitive, definitely check out my course, Intuitive Plant Medicine. Intuitive Plant Medicine has been running for over a decade now. It has been so amazing to see all the gateways it's opened for people, whether they are training to be an herbalist, whether they're a seasoned herbalist, or whether they're none of the above. They're just interested in plants, want to open up to be able to communicate to the living world, want to be able to have these numinous experiences that really help them connect into their path and their medicine. So definitely check that out. If any of this is calling to you, it is my seminal program in really helping you become a plant healer, to become someone who can commune with the living world, who can talk to plants, and who can receive all of the medicine that this world is so lovingly and so continuously offering us. This next question is a very tender and sensitive one from a listener, and I feel really honored to be able to answer from my life experience so far, and hope that it is helpful and is meeting all those who are listening who need this. So the question is, how do you connect to the other side and people that we have lost? So first, I want to name about this that when we are in grief, grief is its own kind of liminal state. It is its own phase state and change state. And when we are deep in grief, when we have lost someone and we are deep in grief, it can be really hard to connect in, to hear messages. And this is for a reason. Think of it as a blanketing time. Think of it as a time in which your body is being asked to be held, in which you are in transition in your life, in which the constellation of your life and your relationships has changed in such a big way that you're going to need time to integrate, to be with that. And I'm saying this because sometimes people have this feeling of like, what's wrong with me that I can't connect? Or is this not real because, my loved one has passed and I haven't seen them yet in my dreams? And so this is often what I see, is that we're in this liminal state of grief, and it's one of those states that we just have to be in, that we just have to move through, that nothing is wrong with you, but the intensity sometimes of our feelings can mean that it's harder to receive the subtlety, the really subtle hints or messages that are coming in, and you will be able to, you will receive that. So trust that that is happening. Ask to be held, ask for signs, specifically request a sign from your loved one. It could be something in nature, something you both shared or knew about. Ask for that sign, ask to be shown that sign. This is a huge way that our loved ones can communicate with us from the other side. Ask to feel them, even if it's, subtle, just literally ask to be hugged. Sometimes that asking is something we deeply need. And just through speaking aloud and connecting in this way, it can start to create more of a bridge. I also find that when people transition to the other side, they're often in a process. Now, it's a little complicated because I think we all have different levels to our soul, different parts of our soul. I think one part of our soul immediately goes back and into connection with all that is, back into the divine, reconnect with source, reconnecting with God, able to immediately, communicate with us and be in connection with us. And then I think there's other parts of our souls that need more time to process, that are still processing earthly experiences, that are maybe still learning how to let go, that are processing what they experienced in their life. My experience of having loved ones pass has often been that if there's a lot for them to process from their life, it can take some time before I can feel their energy too. So sometimes it's not just my grief, it's what they are still processing. So I know that, when my grandfather passed when I was a teenager, I didn't hear from him in a dream for almost 10 years. And when I heard from him in a dream 10 years later, he came and he updated me on what he's been doing, the kind of ways he's been growing and evolving. And it was so wild and amazing. And so that took that amount of time. And every once in a while now I get updates from him, and he's sort of in a different place, doing a different thing, learning something different. But I know that he's busy, he's working on something. Same with my grandmother. It took not quite as much time because I think I was just at this point in time have more practice in connecting with the other world, but it took at least a year for me to see her in my dreams. And so dreams are a big place in which our loved ones will communicate to us. So any way in which you can connect more through dreams, I highly encourage you to check out the episode that I have, Dreams as a Bridge to a New Life, to help increase your dream life, to open yourself to dreams. This is a very porous place in which people can reach us. And so I've normally had two experiences of connecting with loved ones in dreams. Normally, it's much easier for me to connect with people in dreams who either there's a feeling of completeness around their passing, it was their time, they passed away of old age, or they're not directly connected to me. I definitely have had people who are loved ones of my loved ones of really good friends. And I find it tends to be that it's easier for them to reach out to someone who's not really deeply emotionally invested. And so, I've had experiences where people have reached out to me immediately after passing, but it's normally not my loved one, and it's normally a message for someone else. And there's sort of an open energy in those first few days or weeks after passing, where it seems to be that messages can come through a little bit more easily. And so be open to the ways in which your loved ones might be communicating to you through other people, whether that's very direct, someone saying, I had a dream about your loved one, or, a song comes on the radio, someone mentions something, and you just get that feeling of your loved one being there, of them communicating with you. Trust that feeling, because they are here. They are trying to communicate with us. They want you to know that they're well, that you're loved, that there's so much love and peace beyond our imagining on the other side. So just really trust what it is that you're receiving anytime you receive any kind of affirmation, confirmation, synchronicity, or sign. Really trust that. Really embrace that and trust yourself in what you know. Creating altars for loved ones is another really big way to not only connect with your loved ones, but also help them on their journey. So creating altars after they've passed to help them on their journey. You can bring fresh flowers to this place, make prayers in this place, put things on the altar that they loved in life, really setting forth that intention and that prayer that they really, like all of them that is ready can bridge over into source, can bridge back into ultimate love, and make the request too to communicate with them there. Have it be a tableau that they can communicate with you. Put on your metaphoric mind. We recently had a very sudden death in our family, and I made an altar for this person and put a picture of him on the altar. And the day that I made the altar, the picture got blown back and down onto the ground and I couldn't find it. And this person was like, he had such a twinkle. He had such a good sense of humor. He had such a sweetness to him and was also very shy, didn't want to be in the public eye, didn't want to be seen. And I knew it was a message from him being I'm here and I'm a little bashful about this altar, but also I'm happy you did it. So I put the picture back up on there and we haven't had any other incident since, but these messages will come through on the altar as well. So make the altar, tend the altar, see what comes through, just through the tending of it, just through being with that. And know that there are going to be specific times of the year in which it's easier to communicate with your loved one. Anniversaries are one of those times, anniversaries of their birth or their death. These are really potent times to make altars like this, to, make offerings, to ask to see them in a dream, to ask for a sign, your sign or synchronicity. Also, in autumn. So in many different cultures, autumn is this very powerful time to connect to our ancestors, this time when the veil grows thin as the life from the above ground world goes back into the underworld. We have this opportunity to walk between the worlds and receive communications from our loved ones. So it kind of happens without fail that I'm not even thinking about it. And as soon as we hit fall, I start having dreams with ancestors, with loved ones who've passed. And then I'm like, oh, right, it's fall. That's why this is happening. So, past the equinox into the end of October, into Samhain time, or wherever you are in the world, maybe you're in the Southern Hemisphere and that timing's a little different for you. But to know that this autumn time is a really powerful, potent time to request those connections, to make those connections. And if you're interested in being walked through that in a little bit more of an intimate way, in my class, Herbs for the Other World, I specifically talk about practices of, ancestor connection, of altar creation, of doing journeys to the other world to be able to connect into those you've loved, as well as your other world guides. So that class is there as a resource for you. If you're interested, I go, more into things around connecting to the other world in all its varieties, including our loved ones. And it is a very true reality that fall is just this time when the veil gets thin and there's just more possibilities for connecting here. So any of the practices I mentioned, as well as just being open to what's coming through this fall and trusting yourself for what you pick up on and in what you're experiencing, knowing that this connection is alive, it's available to you, it is here, and this connection is only going to grow from this point onwards, because in your heart of hearts, you are wanting to connect, you are wanting to open, and with beyond a shadow of a doubt, your loved ones on the other side are wanting to connect with you too. I love this next question from one of our listeners, so I'm just going to play that question because it's so perfectly put, and then we're going to launch into my answer.
I was wondering if you have some insight on how you co-create with nature and how you let nature inspire your own creativity and your own writing.
So this is really important to mention that you are nature. And I think this is at the base of everything that we're talking about here is you are nature. So when we're talking about being in co-creation with nature, where we need to start here is this awareness that you are nature. You are already in co-creation with nature because your body is part of the planet. You are part of the planet. It's just about becoming aware of it and being conscious of the ways in which we're co-creating. One of the best ways to do this is simply to ask to be in co-creation, to take time, intentional time to go outside, to connect with the living world, and really pledge, say with your heart, I want to be in co-creation. Help me to understand how best to show up inside of this relationship so that I can co-create with you. And then enacting a ritual of co-creation. So one of my favorite things to do is to create an outdoor altar, to ask to collect elements from nature, to be in co-creation with elements of nature, and to create an altar space outside to bring things to that space, and then to let the living world move things around in that space, change that space, and understand that that's literally us enacting co-creation in this way. So very physical rituals of being in co-creation, being specific, speaking it out loud, going into the living world, telling the living world what you're dealing with, what you're working on, and then asking to be in connection, to be of service, to continually open your heart and pledge your heart to be in connection. That really goes a long way to make it clear, to make it visceral, to make it honest in that way. And then really being open to what you receive. I talk a lot about channeling in different courses of mine, like intuitive plant medicine, like business as a spiritual journey, because it's been a major tool for me and something I realize that I've been doing all along. But we are all channels. We all have this ability to bring through information, and you are receiving information all the time when you're interacting with the living world. So, literally getting a piece of paper and doing some spontaneous writing down anything that's coming to you in that moment, opening the channel of your voice, speaking in that moment, singing, see what comes through for you. So much of the time we're being given this information of how to co-create. It's all right there. We're just getting in our own way. And the thing about channeling is you're deciding to open yourself. You're deciding to open to the living world, to the benevolence of the living world, and asking for that information to channel through you. And that's really your only goal. That's the only two things you need to do for channeling is be specific about what you want to connect to, and then open up. And if you need to, create this circle of protection around yourself, have prayers, call in guides. But as long as you're specific about the energies you want to connect into, that's protection unto itself. And then you drop into spontaneous writing, spontaneous speaking, spontaneous singing or movement. This is all different forms of channeling. And this will help you tune into what are the messages that are coming through in nature. And I really just want to encourage you too to understand that the intuitive hits that you get, the places you're supposed to move to, the projects you're supposed to engage in, that is all co-creation too. Because at our hearts, the things that we are meant to do, that we're called to do, that our soul is asking us to engage in, is how we co-create with nature. So you can get specific with your channeling, with your requesting. You can literally make requests outside on your altar. You could even place different elements on the altar and say, hey, if this is the direction that I'm meant to move, move this flower or change this aspect of the altar or just leave it open for interpretation. You can do all of these specific things and at the same time knowing that your passions that move through you, your purpose, your direction, the things that ignite you, that is you co-creating with nature because you're co-creating with your body, inside your life. The more ways in which you can befriend your body is the more ways in which you will co-create with the living world. I did develop a course called Writing the Earth's Voice that is specifically about working with the earth, channeling from the earth, writing as a way of opening up this dialogue back and forth with the land, with nature spirits, with the earth herself. So if writing is a way in which you're able to connect, then that class has been really extraordinary for helping people to open up to and connect with the land and start to hear these co-creative messages, because so much of the time, the creation that we're being asked to undertake are emotional healings and spiritual movements inside ourselves, like you working on self-acceptance, self-compassion, you being willing to go for the things you're passionate about. This is part of your co-creation. So, we can get very specific messages of like, move this rock or build this thing, but we can also get messages like, like really accept yourself for where you're at. Know that it's okay. Let your body rest. Those are all co-creations too. And the more we can lean into those kinds of messages our body's wisdom, and trust ourselves as the channels that we are, the easier and easier it will be to just naturally and effortlessly be in co-creation with this planet, which is why I think we as humans are meant to be here, and our special role that we're here to fulfill is to be able to attune to the voice of this planet and the chorus that we live among, and use our special powers of intention and intuition to co-create by following these through lines of our own passion and momentum and inspiration in life. So this next question felt like a really good continuation of this last question, so I wanted to make sure I answered them in tandem. And I'm going to just go ahead and play that question now because it was so perfectly put.
I would love to hear you talk like a little more about fairies. I'm very well acquainted with the lore, especially Irish lore, in which, you know, fairies are kind of shown to have been more hostile to humans. You know, modern intuitives I've heard talk about fairies, on the other hand, speak more positively about them. So I was curious if you had any thoughts on why that might be, and if you have any tips on connecting with fairies in a way that is healthy for both parties.
So just like humans, fairies, the hidden folk, the little folk are diverse. They are unique. There's not one type of hidden folk in this world. They are playful and they are also mischievous. And in this way, really, I think of the hidden folk as having, it's almost like, I think of this as the nature of humans before all the overlays of like culture, enculturation, programming, you know, how we're born in terms of like this level of like vivid excitement about life, intensity of feelings, you know, mischievousness, and then also, you know, this deep wisdom, like the kind of wisdom that we all are born with, that we understand innately, and that we spend the rest of our lives trying to understand again. So I think that sometimes there's this disconnect, especially in European lore, because a lot of the lore around fairies from the Western world is coming from a culture that has experienced disconnection, or coming from a set of cultures that has experienced disconnection from the earth and is working on reconnecting and is working on building safety in connection again. I hear different kinds of stories from cultures that didn't have the same kind of severance or disruption in their connection with the living world. Across the board, there's respect for fairies. There's respect for the hidden people. That respect is essential. And when that respect is not there or is violated or ignored, that's when you can get into trouble. And so in places where there has been long-term connection with the hidden folk, one of the things you're going to find the most of is respect. And, you know, this is because respect is essential for any kind of connection, but it's also, you know, when I think about a lot of these cultures, for example, in Ireland, where there has been disruption, there's a working on a rebuilding here of trust, of mutual understanding. And I think that when it comes to the hidden folk or to fairies, like there's all the things, right? It's like there's deep benevolence and deep care, and there's, you know, also like purity of feeling and emotion, and sometimes like anger and, you know, need to hold boundaries. And it's really a reflection for us to understand the ways in which we are often lacking boundaries, or the ways in which we are meant to be in right relationship with the world around us. You know, nature spirits are tricksterish. They are mischievous. As I mentioned before, they have a deep sense of humor. So they're multi-layered, they're complex. And I think this is one reason why children do find it easier to connect with them, is that they understand each other on this level that is, I would say, like more like the prima terra of consciousness, or of our own consciousness, than all the different layers that we get over time. And so I think that's one of the differences in why fairies are represented in a certain way now versus in lore. Now I do think it's important to have boundaries in all relationships, boundaries are what makes relationships flourish, right? Like you can't have a relationship unless you have these two entities that are interacting. And so that's one of the themes that I do sometimes see when people are talking about fairies today or working with nature spirits, is that there's sort of this lack of boundariedness that can sometimes lead to this sort of blanket representation of nature spirits as all, completely like benevolent or loving or helpful, when they're their own beings with their own life path, their own trajectory. What I will say is that there are general guidelines for connecting with fairies that I find to be really helpful. First one is be present. Really be present in that moment. Choose a time to connect when you feel very present. If you're not present, they will be able to feel that and know that and experience that. And that does not work great for them. It also won't work great for you to be able to open up the channel and really be able to commune with them. Take time to ground before you connect. Your ungroundedness can often be reflected back to you in what you experience and in the way in which you're connecting with the living world. So take time to ground. Release all expectations. Nobody likes the feelings of expectations, especially not the fairies. So release expectations. Be open-minded about how this interaction might come about. Approach with humility, approach with respect. These are powerful beings who have been connected with the living world since before humanity came on the scene. They understand so much more about existence than we do. And so approach with that kind of humility and respect. And if possible, bring an offering. This is why this is part of so much traditional lore around fairies. Bring some sort of offering from the heart, something that, is important to you, that is, of course, biodegradable and healthy for the earth. Bring an offering and offer it with the fullness of your heart, as well as, this intention, and to speak aloud this intention to be in co-creation with them for the benefit of the land, to open up to this commitment to be in co-creation, to care for the well-being of the land, to increase the health of the land in which you live. As long as this is authentic and true for you. And if this is authentic and true for you, that will absolutely open the gateway to work with them, because that's so much of what they love, what they're passionate about. They want humans to care for the world. And this is where a lot of these like tricky instances of communication come in, or interactions, is that like we're approaching with humility, respect, and care for the living world. So you pledging your care to the living world is going to go such a long way in saying, I want to be in connection with you, and here are my parameters of like, my boundaries, or what I'm interested in, or, what are my no's. But within these boundaries, I want to be in connection with you. I want to learn, and my heart is open to learning. And they love that. They love that, and will absolutely help you communicate with you to start leaning into how to be a force for good and healing on the land where you live. As always, cultivating lightness, and a lightness of heart goes a long way. The more serious you are, the more boring you are. Like the more serious you are, the more the fairies are going to be like, I'm not into this vibe. So cultivating a lightness of heart, lightness of energy, just humor. Like the one time I visually saw a fairy with my eyes, it was after I had been pretend with a kid. Me and my best friend were playing with his niece, and we were playing fairies. And after we had been doing this intense fairy play in this room, she had gone to bed, and we both literally saw this flame appear in the room and move across the room. And afterwards we looked at each other and we were like, that was a fairy. And I haven't seen a fairy in that same way since, although I feel them and I communicate with them. But this was, I think, the direct result of really being in the field of that childlike joy and play. And that just helps so much. And then no matter what it is you've experienced, give gratitude for it afterwards. Be thankful for the experience. Thank them for whatever it is you experience. This builds relationship. This builds trust. This builds, capacity for having deepness, for being able to go deep. So giving gratitude for whatever it is you experience, and then moving through all those steps again. And the more you do this, the more trust you'll build within yourself, but also in your connection. The more trust the other world, the hidden folk, will build with you. The more you will learn how to create together, how to work together to create more healing for the land. And I thought this next question was such a beautiful continuation of the last one. And this next question was, how do we go from a mindset of shame or a mindset of everything is wrong with the world to moving into the space of gratitude and blessing the world? This question came in connection with the podcast that I released about how to work with nature spirits this past summer. And it's such a precious one and such an important one, because I think so many of us are walking around with this feeling of deep inherited shame, deep shame around being humans, deep shame around the harm we've caused this earth, this deep feeling like everything we do is just creating more harm and we can't get out of the cycle. And as this listener very astutely reflected upon, like, this is a blocking energy. Like, that energy of shame can often like block us from really seeing how we can bless this world, how we can be in gratitude for what is. And here's this really important piece around shame and self-judgment is, like, the earth, and this is everything I talk about in my book, Mirrors in the Earth, but the earth wants us to start to dissolve this shame or the self-judgment, because how we are able to give our gifts to this world is through self-acceptance, is through self-compassion. But there's this very somatic reality in which we need to just allow the feeling to be there rather than resist it. What you resist persists. And so often when we feel shame, when we feel like everything's wrong, when we're feeling a lot of self-judgment, what's happening is that we're not actually allowing ourselves to just feel that feeling, to let it move through us. It's a movement, almost like an electrical charge, letting go of the story around it and being willing to feel it. And specifically with shame in particular, the antidote to shame is sharing. So if you're feeling shame around something, voice that. And it doesn't have to be to another person, but literally going out to the world, going out to the earth and expressing all the gunk, all the things that you feel ashamed about, all the ways in which you think you're not a force for good for this world, all the ways in which you judge yourself, all the ways in which you think everything is going to Hades in a handbasket in our world. Express that to the earth. Ask the earth to hold that. Ask the earth to hear you. And what you will find when you just express it, you let it out verbally, you let your body move, you let it move through you, is that the earth will greet you with non-judgment, with acceptance, and with hope, over and over and over again. And this is a practice. Gratitude and blessing is a practice. And it's a practice I do talk about in my teaching, that as humans, we're here to bless this world. I really, truly believe this. And one of the ways in which we bless this world is through our gratitude. And gratitude is a practice. You're not going to feel it all the time. As soon as you say your gratitudes or write your gratitudes down, it's a practice. And ideally, it's a daily practice. Every day, taking time, whether it's first thing in the morning or at the end of the day, to write down the things that you're grateful for, or to say them out loud, to speak them to the earth. And it's this amazing experience where once you start, you realize there's actually so much to be grateful for. And so we cultivate gratitude, not before we give the gratitudes, but through the practice of giving gratitude. That's how we cultivate gratitude. And it is a practice. The more you practice feeling gratitude, the more you'll be able to bless this world with your thankfulness, with your gratitude. The more you're going to be in alignment with the energy of this planet, this energy of resiliency, of compassion, of non-judgment, and of hope. And know that you're not judged for having shame either, that is just an energy. It's just a charge that needs to be released. And speaking this out loud to the earth, letting yourself express it, moving through it whenever it comes up, because we're human. It's going to come up. It's not like we're going to do this once and we're going to be done. Let it come up, express it, move it. And then you will find you have these numinous moments where the earth is telling you, there's nothing to be ashamed of. Not even your shame. Don't even be ashamed of your shame. There is nothing to be ashamed of. Everything is part of me. As the earth speaking, everything is part of me. Everything's accepted. Everything is welcomed. And you coming home to your own self-compassion is the force of healing that you're meant to bring to this world. And that is everything that my book, Mirrors in the Earth, is about. And if you find that this conversation has been helpful, I want to let you know that on my website, I have a series of meditations that go along with each single chapter in the book. All of those meditations are also on sale for 30% off right now. And so each meditation will take you deeper into these experiences of connecting with the living world and letting go of shame, letting go of guilt, letting go of this feeling like everything is somehow wrong, and embracing the essential energies and qualities of healing that the earth emanates, these qualities of hope, these qualities of belief, these qualities of healing and resilience and love. So those are there for you if that would be supportive. And this brings us to our final question, which is just a perfect way to end. So this question is, what is the connection between an individual's life myth and the earth's dreaming? How is each person's dream related to the earth's dreaming? You know, this is something I say a lot in my work, that we are part of the earth's dream, that we as humans have been dreamt up and created by this earth. I call this earth an archangel, and that we are part of a dream that is so much bigger than us. It's hard for us to even fully understand. It's hard for us to have that big picture. We're not even meant to have that big picture, except to know that we're not a mistake. We're here for a reason. We're part of the dreaming. And everything that we enact on this planet is part of that dreaming as well. And that can sometimes be hard to wrap our heads around, especially when it's violent and painful and confusing. But to trust that the more we connect into our own selves, our own intuition, our own goodness, our own evolution, the more we become an active part of the dreaming. We're all dreaming it all the time. We're all here in this collective dream, dreaming this experience here together on Earth. It's all a dream. Sometimes it's a nightmare. But sometimes it's absolutely beautiful. And so we're all a part of this experience. And our goal here is to become conscious dreamers, active dreamers, to recognize that we do have the power to create change, that we do have the power to be a part of this beautiful evolution of dreaming on this planet and to make the dream more beautiful. And that's really the ask, is that we're making the dream more beautiful, right? Through being willing to lean in to where we're being guided, to lean into our own healing, our own evolution, to lean into self-gentleness, self-compassion, self-understanding. We are this holographic reflection of the earth. And so the more we tend to our earth with care and compassion, the more we tend to our dreams with care and compassion, the more we recognize that the pure impulses that are moving through us, the ways in which our heart is communicating to us, is bringing us deeper and deeper into the dream of this planet, that it is inseparable. We have never once been separate from the dream of this planet. We are all part of this dream. And the invitation now is to lean into that which lights you up, to lean into the unfoldment of your own soul on this planet, because that is the energy that's going to help this dream become even more beautiful, to evolve in a way that will create more diversity, more potential, more hope on this planet. The journey is so much bigger than any of us in our individual lives could ever conceive of. And yet we are all a part of it. And what you are leaning into, your growth, your evolution, your unfoldment, is essential to the larger, beautiful, intricate, meaningful, magnificent, angelic dream that is unfolding here. You are part of that dream, and you are a co-creator. The myth of your life is the myth of this planet. And the more you can lean into its mythological components, its beauty, its depth, its diversity, its meaning, the more you will bring meaning and depth and diversity to the whole. So, thank you for being with me for this Q&A part 2. These questions were so deep. I have loved diving into this with you. If this is speaking to you, if you know that you want to go deeper with me in studying, in moving into these kinds of realms of healing, definitely head over to my website, check out this 30% off sale while it lasts until next Monday, the 22nd. The website is asiasuler.com, and I would love to see you in any of those courses. And thank you for all your questions. Thank you for all your voice notes that you've left for me. If you would like to leave me another voice note, if you have more questions for the next Q&A podcast, you can go on over to asiasuler.com/remember. And thank you as well for everyone who's left a rating or review. Even though I'm currently on my sabbatical, I still check this from time to time and I go, thank you so much. Every time I see one, every time I see that I've gotten another rating or someone has taken time out of their beautiful, busy lives to write me a review. So I'm so grateful for that. I'm so grateful for this community, for this collective that we're a part of, for all of your thoughtfulness, for your depth, for all of the things that you are working with, the things that you are creating, the things that you're healing. It's just such an honor to be here with you. And it's such an honor to walk on this path together as we all collectively remember the most important thing of all, why we're here.